Let me tell you a story. I'll be quick as I can. Terrible news from the Holy Land. Pictures of children etched in my mind, buried in the rubble on the firing line. The Jews and the Arabs live one and the same. 1,000 years, then the Zionists came like a river, came like a flood. Al-Nakba was written on the walls in blood. Talk about settlers from far away. Talk about dollars from the USA. Talk about blast bombs, the bullets and the lead, the shadow of the jackboot hanging over your head. What can you do when they demolish your home? Olive trees buried and gone. Do you dare to resist? Stand on the road with a rock in your fist. In Palestine, in Palestine, they talk about peace like it's a moral obligation. There'll never be peace under occupation. Talk about talks to the beat of a drum. 78 years, Nakba rolls on. We need to talk about the friends that we endorse. The rockets and the tanks and the warships they disperse. No wonder it seems to be an undemocratic version of democracy in Palestine. In Palestine, let me tell you a story. I'll be quick as I can. There's terrible news from the Holy Land.
Following that song, y'all, just in case you wanted to know. Good morning, church. Good morning. This is going to be interesting. I can't wait to see how I get through this without my readers this morning. I'm anxious to see how I'm going to get through reading our welcome without my readers, but the Supreme Court's decision to cut the voter rights bill, the wars on Iran, Gaza, Sudan, and Cuba, serves as reminders of the ongoing struggle for justice and peace in our world. And I'm here this morning to remind myself and to remind others and to tell our visitors we are home and we are welcome here. If you believe that as inhabitants of this beautiful blue planet, that you are commanded to safeguard the existence of all animals, the plants, the earth, air, the waters, the hidden elements, and to honor our home on Turtle Island, then you have already found your people. Whether you found us by GPS, divine intervention, or a wrong turn that turned out to be a very right turn, you landed exactly where you're supposed to be. And because Reverend Janet only gave me 2 minutes, here's an abbreviated list of who belongs here. Sorry, Janet, I tried to keep it under 4 minutes, but, well, here we go. You're welcome here if you're people of faith or of no faith, Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindu, Buddhists, Wiccans, practitioners of Ifa, the spiritual but not religious, and the deeply devoted believers of logic and science. Whether you pray, meditate, or simply Google your existential questions at 2 a.m., welcome home. We welcome the workers, from the moms, dads, grandmas, and papas, caregivers and sanitation workers, keeping our civilization from total collapse, to the teachers and the computer gods and goddesses holding it together with spreadsheets and sheer willpower. We keep the lights on for our kids and to sharpen the minds of our young. We see you, we are you. Our immigrant family, you cross borders and rivers and probably a mountain of paperwork to get here. We're honored you chose this place for a better life with us. Those between the chapters of their lives, whether you're in between jobs or holding on by a thread, praying, hustling, and doing what it takes to keep your family safe and a roof over your head, you belong here. Our racial and ethnic kin from every corner of the globe, the wildly beautiful tapestry of humanity, our First Nation people, our stolen legacy people, the remix of a gumbo of a people. You make the world blush and wish they had your swag. Our LGBTQ community, your unique gifts and your absolutely iconic contributions are not just tolerated here, they are celebrated. Now, while confetti is optional, your joy is mandatory. People with diverse abilities, your strength, creativity, and resilience don't go unnoticed. Honestly, you make the rest of us look like we're barely trying. The youth, the ones that show up with colorful tats and piercings and bigger dreams and the audacity to demand a better world. Keep going. We're cheering from behind. You found a home here. Our elders, the OGs, the one who built this road we're all walking. Your sacrifices and wisdom are not just honored here. They are the foundation of everything we do. In short, if you are a human being doing your best on this spinning rock, the church in Ocean Park is your people. We rise together. We advocate together. Welcome to the church in Ocean Park.
Good morning. I'm the minister here, Janet Gollery McKithen, and I also welcome you here. Thank you so much to our sister Trudy. We are a multi-faith, multi-belonging community. We are a people of all different faith traditions and none at the same time. This morning there will be a couple of differences, as if last week with, who was it? Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah, Edgar Allan Poe was not different enough. We are having another different Sunday this morning. But the biggest difference you'll find out if you have been here before is the community sharing, which Ian will let you know how that is going to be different this morning. Usually we pass the microphone around, and that's not what we're doing this morning. We begin with a land acknowledgement that Ian will be doing, but we also acknowledge that our country and our communities were built on the backs of people who were stolen from Africa, placed into bondage, and then forced into labor. We acknowledge that we benefit from that labor that has never been repaid. In our acknowledgement, let us commit ourselves to healing by helping create a more just and equitable world through changing how we do things that we see as normal but are actually systemically hurting people. We also acknowledge that we have allowed an authoritarian government to take root in our country, and people are being kidnapped off of our streets and thrown away. We are responsible for destroying cultures and lives in other countries as well. Our tax dollars are funding the genocide in Gaza and in funding other wars as well. At the church in Ocean Park, we recognize that everybody has biases. It doesn't matter how many anti-bias training you've gone to. So we intentionally listen to people who have life experiences that are different from ours so that we can build compassion and hope and healing. So this morning you'll hear from a variety of people, and if you disagree with anybody, something that I've said so far or something that anybody has said, just know that your voice is just as important as whoever just spoke. Once you walk in here, you are a part of the church in Ocean Park. You're already a member of this community, so you are just as important as anybody else. Every morning we center ourselves with a Thich Nhat Hanh chant. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now, 3 times. Just take a deep breath. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. Welcome to the church in Ocean Park. We're glad you're here. And I want to bring, now you're going to hear from moderator, who is our friend and I'm part of the church in Ocean Park, Ian Schiffer.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to the folks on Zoom. We have folks who are joining us from all around the world who are here for Jewish Dissent, Failure and the Intricacies of Exile, with Dr. Hila Amit, Asher Firestone, Meital Yaniv, and I'm Ian Schiffer, and I will be moderating. Hinenu, hinenu. We are here. Muchana umezumana lishmor et Torat hashalom. We are here, we are ready, and prepared to practice the Torah of nonviolence, the Torah of peace. We are here in Tovangar, the ancestral lands of Tongva Tam, the Tongva people, who have been here since time immemorial. We are here in the lands of Chulvu, the sagebrush, wet oak, Hunar, the bear, and we are 3 blocks away from Momat, the ocean. We're in the lands of 4 sacred rivers, The closest river to us is Paimei Pahait, the West River. All 4 of these rivers have been concretized. We're in lands where the waters that are the same waters of our grandmothers, the same waters of their grandmothers, have been concretized. These are the same waters that are in Palestine, the same waters that are in Eastern Europe, the same waters that are in Yemen, in Iran. And there are native peoples who are still living here, protecting their place, calling in a reverence and a hospitality for the waters and the land where we live. Through many layers and waves of colonization, people continue to choose thrivance and dissent here in these lands. To be in diaspora is a gift and a blessing. To be kui, or guest, or ger in Hebrew, gerim, is an opportunity to choose to support with responsibility teshuva, which means return or repair or reparations. So as guests, we are in this space, the gift of getting to be in this land that's been caretaken for so many years. We get to listen to the sacred place names where we are close to Kuruvugna, the place where the water flows. Paihunadu is where 1/3 of the water in this land is taken from. So many different streams are nourishing our bodies each day, and we get to listen each moment of how to be in right relationship with where we live. Es brennt. It's burning. We are here. We're going to take a moment to listen. Take a moment in silence. Take a moment in breath. To be with the hundreds of thousands of martyrs and people who have violently lost their homes and lives in Gaza, occupied West Bank, Lebanon, Yemen, and Iran. I'll take an ocean breath together. We are right near the water. That is, again, the same water in all of those places. Let us breathe together and be with the memories, the lives, and the futures of these places. Our gathering today brings together 3 queer artists who chose the path of dissent and immigration after growing up under a zionist and militaristic ideology. Drawing on practices of dissent, decolonial healing, failure, exile versus diaspora, and grief, this panel intimately explores dissent through vulnerability and chosen weakness, dissent as renunciation of Israeli citizenship, dissent as refusal, and dissent as reimagining previously siloed potentialities of care. Using their experiences, being raised as occupiers, these artists will facilitate a unique opportunity for those in relation with all fractions of Jewish lineages to reconsider the revolutionary futures and underlying roots of our violent reality. I'm feeling goosebumps as someone with Jewish lineage that is a choice, that is a possibility, that is a prayer, that is a hope. Thank you. Thank you. Today, you will hear each panelist share, and then we will open the space for Q&A. Please write your questions on the paper you have received upon entry and pass them to me. Folks will have 18 minutes to share, and then people on Zoom, write your questions in the chat, and those questions will get to me. And if you didn't get a piece of paper, there's more pieces of paper right here. Let's take one more breath again. Bendigamos hamechin mitzadei shalom. We bless your footsteps that walk in peace. Thank you so much for this generous offering. Thank you for your gifts, and thank you for this life. Okay. Folks want to show some gratitude as we're about to enter into a vulnerable, courageous Beautiful offering. Thank you all.
Hi. So good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And just walking into this space, I felt so much joy and so much hope seeing the signs that you have here and the home that you opened for everyone. And I just hope that every synagogue and every house of prayer and spirituality would be able to offer this to people around the world. It's really inspiring. My name is Hila Amit. I'm going to talk a bit about some issues notions of Jewish descent. I'm going to speak through the Israeli experience, and then we'll kind of go through like the diasporic experience and the Jewish American experience. So we're gathered here today to talk about Jewish descent. And what I've been noticing recently is how descent feels differently in my body when I'm in Israel, Palestine, when I'm in the United States, and when I'm in Germany. So I'm currently in Los Angeles under a German fellowship. And as a Jewish writer living in Germany, I've experienced growing pressure in my public work, and it's been unsettling to witness the depth of institutional support for Israel there, a support that increasingly shapes the boundaries of what we can say, what we can publish, and what can be funded. And the same processes have been happening here in the United States, even before Trump's second term. So in the local context where each of us live, the space of dissent feels narrower than it once did. And it's difficult and at times scary to see how this dynamic can silence or marginalized activists, artists, and voices calling for Palestinian rights, even outside the state of Israel. And in some ways, the pushback I've been experiencing in Germany has been even more intense than the pushback I encountered in Israel, something that is worth reflecting on. So when we're talking about Jewish descent, I want to ask, in what spaces are we acting? What forms of dissent are available to each and every one of us? What level of risk are we willing to take at each moment in our lives? And when we act in defiance of state power, and reflect on the fact that the risk we are willing to take might change. What I was willing to do when I was 18 might be different than now in my 40s, might change again when I'm in my 60s or my 80s. And one more important question is what forms of dissent are actually available to each and every one of us. For example, not every Israeli Jew can decide to renounce their Israeli citizenship and leave the land in a call for a decolonial future. Sadly, most of the people who cannot do this are Arab Jews, like me and my families, who don't have a second citizenship in another land to return to, like many Ashkenazi Israelis. So my mom comes from Iran, my father comes from Syria. These are not places that Israeli citizens can go back to. In this very short talk, therefore, I want to think about three notions of dissent, out of many, that are available to Jewish Israelis. And I'm hoping American Jews can think or use through these notions to address what they can do here. So the three are immigration, or living the land of Israel, evading or dodging military service in Israel, and living the Hebrew language as a language that has transformed to be the language of the occupation, genocide, and Jewish supremacy. And the overall arch guiding me here is thinking about political action that challenges what we on the left, in Israel, Palestine, in Germany, in the state, think of as direct political action. So when I think about direct action, I think, for example, of protective presence in the West Bank today, demonstrations against house demolitions, refusing to serve in the Israeli military and going to prison for that. So these are all actions that require us to perform dissent in a way that exposes our body to risk. In other words, these are actions that demand the performance of heroism. The equivalent in the American context would be, at the moment, white Americans using their bodies to protect undocumented people from ICE. And we've seen how fatal this can be. There are also forms of dissent in Israel-Palestine that require less obvious heroic performances. So, for example, there's Israelis taking Palestinians without permits from their homes in the West Bank to swim in the Mediterranean Sea. And it's easy for them to cross checkpoints because of racial profiling. So they might go undetected, and it poses actually no risk for them. There are lawyers, there are human rights workers who are devoting their time and labor attempting to change the political framework, to amend laws, to challenge legislation. And while these are important political acts, sometimes even considered heroic, maybe because of the social consequences that these people face in Israel, there are also acts that remain within the system itself. And in Israel, this system is a system of apartheid. So if an NGO seeks to assist Palestinians from Gaza to reach hospitals in Israel, and this is something that I've done for 3 years in the early 2000s, so from a very personal experience, I can say, this requires talking, so being in touch with the military apparatus who is in charge of the checkpoints, right? So one might say that these NGOs in Israel function as a bitter pill that sweetens the occupations. The NGOs, as well as the High Supreme Court in Israel, are what allows Israel to be recognized as a democratic actor in international arena. Even though this democracy that exists in Israel, in that territory, is a democracy for Jews and Jews alone. So activists who engage in forms of defiance, as I've described, might speak in terms of hope. Hope for a change in the territory, hope for a better future for Israelis and Palestinians from the river to the sea. And ironically, the Israeli anthem, Hatikva, means the hope. Alongside these forms of political action and dissent within the operating system, I want to consider today another forms of political actions, the politics of withdrawal, pessimism, and failure. I'm not going to go into theory here, but I'll say that I'm guided by queer theory and writers like Judith Butler, Jack Halberstam, Lee Edelman, and more. So we are often taught in activist circles that pessimism, the absence of hope, leads to inaction, leads to passivity. And we are taught to think in terms of success. Pessimism and passivity are frequently characterized as political apathy, as the very opposite of political engagement or action. And those can be perceived as failure. My suggestion here is that activist circles should add to their toolbox activities that are not usually considered direct political action, and that these forms of passive resistance, pessimist withdrawal, and failure are actually going against Zionist ideology in ways that undermine the Zionist demand for heroism. What I want to argue here is that anti-Zionist Jews have not fully managed to detach themselves from the expectation and obligation of heroism and strength. Anti-Zionist activism has required us to confront the mechanism of the regime in ways that demands physical strength and high level of emotional endurance. To name just a few, the risk of being arrested, damage to social, family ties, significant harm to future employment, and at times, of course, the risk of getting physically hurt and even dying. And the central question for me is the demand to present oneself as strong in the face of the state, in fact, just another side of the political Zionist project? Is it possible that genuine anti-Zionist struggle actually requires a different kind of performativity, one that is not recognized today as legitimate in activist circles? Physical vulnerability, weakness, pessimism, and withdrawal. To make my argument clear, I propose approaching this question through the distinction between draft evaders and conscious objectors in Israel. So I'm sure most of you have heard the term refusniks, right? So we know that people in Israel who don't go to the army sit in prison. So they say, well, I'm refusing, I'm not going to serve in the occupation, I'm willing to go to prison for this. And this is an action that is very welcomed by left-wing circles, right? So these people are escorted to their court dates, their faces appear on Facebook and social media, and after they get released from prison, they're actually invited to a lot of anti-Zionist circles around the world to speak about what they're doing. So they're very much considered as heroes, right, in this anti-Zionist circles. And in contrast, young Israeli Jews who seek exemption from military service based on psychological grounds, which is one of the options, they're not perceived as heroes at all. So their release from army service is not even recognized as part of the political action against the occupation. So those who evade the draft in any other way than the conscious objector and going to prison are not interviewed, they're not photographed, they're not accompanied to meetings with military mental health officers, they're not warmly received by the left-wing community, and their stories and experiences are largely excluded from a narrative of struggle. Moreover, the very act for applying to this mental health release, and this is something that I did when I was 18, these activists have to present themselves as weak, fragile, under psychological distress, fearful, on the verge of collapse, depressed, and even suicidal. In other words, the exact opposite of heroic. And when I define non-heroic act, I think of actions that do not require confrontation and do not carry punishment. So there's something profoundly unheroic about obtaining a mental health exemption. In this sense, departure from Israel, immigration, leaving, fleeing, choosing to live somewhere that is perceived as easier, is also framed as deeply unheroic, passive, and even cowardly. So within the Zionist framework, and some of you maybe heard the concept yerida in Hebrew, leaving Israel is understood as betrayal, abandoning the ship. The left side of the political spectrum might use different language, different terminology, but leaving Israel is still perceived as strongly negative. Much like the expectation to oppose the occupation from within, left-leaning Israelis are often called upon to stay and fight for their country, fight for the rights of Palestinians. This logic mirrors the terminology used in left-wing discussions in Israel about the military. The idea that we must be the good soldiers in the checkpoint, or we must send our sons to be the good soldiers in the checkpoints. This terminology stems from a political consciousness remaining within the system. We stay within the army and fight, we stay within Israel and fight. The staying and fighting within is framed as the way to oppose Netanyahu's government and resist Jewish supremacy. Leaving Israel or evading army service is not recognized as a political act. Worse, it's often cast as an act of betraying the left itself. And I want to destabilize this notion. So Jewish Israelis who declare themselves too weak to spend 2 years in prison, too vulnerable to face police in demos every day, too anxious to live in shelters between running from one demo to the other. So by choosing not to be heroes, to evade or withdraw from struggle that demands bodily and psychological strength, they're actually practicing a genuine radical form of resistance to Zionism. They refuse, evade, or opt out of the Zionist demand to inhabit the role of the hero, a demand that operates in similar ways both within the Zionist camp and within the anti-Zionist one. The State of Israel demands its citizens to confront the security situation and fulfill their roles as strong soldiers, strong mothers who send their sons to the battlefield without resistance, strong civilians who manage to stay in the shelters every few months for a month and a half. Accordingly, left-wing activists are also expected within the anti-Zionist camp to be strong, to withstand military and police violence and demonstration, to endure psychological toll that accompanies working in these NGOs, to be arrested, to serve time in prison, to be shunned by family and friends for their opinion. The left, too, demands its members that they sacrifice their bodies and their minds in the struggle against the occupation, to be heroes for our Palestinian sisters, for democracy, for morality. Being vulnerable, Judith Butler claims, is neither fully passive nor fully active. It operates in a space in between. And what I want to suggest here is this acknowledgement of vulnerability undermines the fundamental assumption of Israeli activism. And by undermining these assumptions, we can push forward towards the destabilization of the system itself. So I'm going to add one more thread to this concept I've been developing. So just as I've discussed immigration and evading military service, I've recently begun to think about another form of passive resistance to Zionism. The departure not only from the territory, but from the language itself. In a new essay I'm currently working on, I'm reflecting on the possibilities of moving away from Hebrew, a language that today is marked by the violence and by Jewish supremacy. In a recent publication in a literary journal, 40 authors gathered together to talk about how Hebrew has been transformed and changed through military and through Zionism to the language of genocide. I'll quote just one sentence from one of these essays. So the author Elad Lapidot writes, "Our language has been beaten, its letters into swords. The more eloquent the speech, the more it sickens the souls and cry out for blood." But once again, at the end of this journal, these authors of the left, of the anti-Zionist camp, both in Israel and in the diaspora, insist that we must continue to use Hebrew in order to purify it. We need to cleanse it from the blood of the genocide. And the terminology, again, is of active resistance, of fighting. So calling each other to work hard together, to fight together, and to avoid failure. So just to briefly describe something that Jack Halberstam said, or how Jack Halberstam talks about failure in queer theory, they seek to locate a space between cynical withdrawal and naive optimism, and alternative political positions that move beyond the binary of pessimism and optimism, and instead gestures towards a different kind of political project, the desire to live otherwise. Halberstam says that sometimes living otherwise, meaning failing to live in the two options that the system provides. And Halberstam's argument is that we must refuse the options as they are presented to us by or against the system, and instead cultivate a different archetype of resistance, one that doesn't speak in the language of action and momentum, but rather articulates itself through refusal, withdrawal, passivity, unmaking, options that are usually termed as failing. What would it mean to stop using Hebrew? To give up? To fail miserably in our attempt to save Hebrew? What would it mean for Israeli authors to refuse this call to resist, to withdraw from participation in the effort to redeem the language of this national project? What if we stop writing in Hebrew? What if we stop publishing in Hebrew? What kind of ripples of failure, individual and collective, would that send through the system? And how much failure would it take to bring this system down? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hila. I'm so grateful to be here. My name is Asher. I use they and he pronouns. I'm a student at CU Boulder, Critical Ethnic Studies Department, and I'm a member of Jewish Voice for Peace. Really, really grateful to everyone at CU Boulder who helped make this happen, Engage Arts and Humanities Fellowship, and the PACES program, who are sponsoring both this panel and the workshop later this afternoon. So I'll give you a little bit of what I've been thinking about the last 2 years and what I'm about to enter into with my doctoral research, specifically around anti-Zionist diaspora relations with Israelis who live on the land. My work really seeks to discover spiritual meaning in Jewish diaspora and provide the groundwork for reframing the state of Israel as a part of Jewish diaspora rather than its supplementation. And I think when I'm doing this work, it's really, really helpful to go back into the anti-Zionist Jewish history, which there is so many incredible sources from religiously, theologically, politically, to remind the movements that I'm in and the work that I do that we are a part of a very, very long history of exilic diasporic culture in Judaism, and that the blip of the Israeli state violence is a very small part of that history and not its all-encompassing reality. I think this history is especially significant in the context of the nation-state of Israel, which claims to symbolize an end to Jewish history and the end for a need for Jewish diasporic life. So these really work concomitantly. One of the philosophers that I'm working with is Polish-American Simon Rerydowicz, who wrote in 1969 that, quote, negating the diaspora is strangely denationalizing, as it frees Israelis, or before the founding of the State of Israel, Hebrews, from seeing themselves as Jews, and Jews remaining in the diaspora from participating in Jewish national culture. So there's something really profound here about what happens and what has happened to Jewish spiritual life in diaspora, how it's grown, how it's flourished, and also how people might disconnect from it because of the co-optation of Judaism by the State of Israel. So for a nation-state like Israel that claims to reinstate Jewish law, there's both a dangerous anachronism and discriminating selection of which biblical laws to uphold, right? And we see this in many countries. But when the ultimate power it's serving is U.S. imperialism rather than God, we might have some questions about whether it really serves a Jewish spiritual purpose. According to Aviezer Ravitsky, several sects of Orthodox Jews, both in and outside of the State of Israel, viewed the mass immigration to Palestine as a blasphemy against God's proclamation of what they describe as the 3 oaths that prohibit the ushering in of messianic times. We could have an entire other conversation about the Messiah and the ushering in, and if you're interested, please let me know. But you may have heard of renowned Satmar Rabbi Yoel Teitelbaum, who goes so far as to claim that the Holocaust was divine punishment of Jews for Zionists' rebellion against God's commandment to live in exile until the Messiah arrives organically. So we might want to question the denial of genocidal responsibility in this theology, but it is still useful to understand the religious anti-Zionist arguments that use Torah to staunchly negate the messianic fervor of Israeli settler extremists. And again, people in the State of Israel might point to these settler extremists being quite a minority, but it is the state's appropriation of their very Zionist theology that maintains the illusion of Israel as an entity rooted in authentic Jewish law and values. So when we're thinking about Jewish assimilation, both here in other countries, and particularly into the Western conception of humanity, it's really important to understand how this kind of new phenomenon in the last 75, 80 years directly contradicts the pre-colonial Jewish understanding of identity in diaspora. Talmudic scholar Daniel Boyarin uses Talmudic excerpts to reveal that, quote, being Jewish is an existential stance, phenomenological, but one that speaks strongly against the notion of the ontologically autonomous individual, end quote. So what does this mean? Well, the State of Israel claims to speak for a broad collective of Jews and their safety. This mission was precluded by buying into modernity's individual investment in hegemonic capitalism. So Hasbara, or Israeli propaganda, now asserts that the right of Israel to exist is a kind of phrase that has been used and has been emptied of meaning. But it has this right to exist despite its crimes against humanity by valorizing its enormous contributions to technology, travel, and global finance. And when I have to kind of come up against this particular Zionist rhetoric, I try to get people to think about what I would rather Palestinians live than have like a new app or understand new things about AI that are actually oppressing people here in Turtle Island. Another Jewish scholar from Germany, Franz Rosenzweig, contends that Jews simply cannot experience futurity via these territorial claims. So as we work with the concept of coloniality, which my work very much does, I'm thinking about how future Jewish anti-Zionist research, work, activism may need to turn to indigenous thought to consider this movement towards landlessness. And of course, Palestinians and indigenous folks here have already made this connection. But what would it mean to look at it through a Jewish lens, through the work of doing anti-Zionist, pro-Palestine work in Jewish communities? There's a lot of indigenous communities that their expectations for connectedness, meaning, and relationality relies on a closeness to their land of origin. But Rosenzweig here is pointing out to the many instances of war that displace any group that relies on owning land. So with so many Zionists turning to the rhetoric of biblical indigeneity to Palestine to combat the Palestinian right of return, I wonder how can diasporic tradition receive its own authentic valor that is distinguished from, but morally congruent with, other marginalized claims to lands of origin. And this is important to think about because there are various forms of decolonization, decoloniality, and it means and can look different for different diasporic communities, and it has over a long time. So being able to distinguish between what is going to work for one community or another is a really important part of talking about decolonization, especially when we are not the people who are being colonized, right? Those future hopes and dreams of what the land in Palestine will actually look like can only be articulated by Palestinians. So my query is whether a strengthening of Jewish diaspora can reshape the narrative of Jewish safety and flourishing that Israel currently has a monopoly over. And my research really tries to ask how might Israelis who are less rooted in the supremacy of Zionism, perhaps what are called liberal Zionists, folks who believe in humanity and are upset with the situation happening in Gaza, but who can't quite come to terms with the reality of colonization. What is the work that needs to be done to bring in imaginary methods that dream of future bloodlines in diaspora instead? So I think that it's important to highlight a lot of these anti-Zionist Jewish thinkers, again, for that continuity throughout time. But the reality is that there's a much greater body of Zionist work that insists that the only true Jewish future is possible through a sacrifice of its own people via military protections of the State of Israel. Now, what a lot of people don't know, because the State of Israel covers this up intentionally, is that suicide ranks as the highest cause of death in the Israeli occupation forces, the IOF. And it makes us think that perhaps an analysis of Israel's own protection of Jewish life is really critical, because that is a point that is made. This is about Jewish safety. We need to question that in terms of what people are asked to do who are Israeli soldiers serving in the military. And as Zionism, initially began to tangibly manifest both before and after the Holocaust, Hannah Arendt writes that the result was the famous Masada complex, in which this newfound desire for dignity was transformed into a potentially suicidal attitude. So perhaps Arendt wasn't necessarily predicting what we're seeing now in the IOF, but she gives us a really helpful historical connection for this modern Israeli phenomenon, rooting Zionism in an inevitable guilt that an ethical body cannot sustain. So I'll bring in Judith Butler here again, who argues in their book Parting Ways, which is all about the critique of Zionism and has informed a lot of Jewish Voice for Peace's strategy and ethic. They write that, quote, "The desire to release life from a guilt secured through legal contract with the state, this would be a desire that gives rise to a violence against violence, one that seeks to release life from a death contract with the law, a death of the living soul by the hardening force of guilt," end quote. While this violence most often takes form in the aggression and slaughter of Palestinians, Israelis seeking to end their contract with a necropolitical state turn this violence against themselves. And when we're thinking about necropolitics, we're thinking about who gets to live and who gets to die, right? And the Israeli state deems Palestinians worthy of death, right? Deems that they're not even worthy of being honored in those deaths. But they also determine which Jews die, right? And with the framework of sacrifice and serving, right, we can see this in many military cultures and justifications. But when the state itself is claiming to explicitly protect Jewish lives, and this is the level of suicidality, there's something we need to push against here. When Israelis finish military service, they're so devastated by the experience of what they have seen and what they have done. And you can look at Breaking the Silence has a lot of testimonies about the really horrific things that some Israelis will come forward to explain that they've done, because it's so well covered up. The two options that these young former soldiers have is either to go abroad and go to other, formerly colonized countries and drug themselves out, or to kill themselves. And this is such a popular and difficult phenomenon that's happening in the state of Israel, that when these folks go abroad, they get so messed up that they come back even more messed up and then make more Israeli soldiers, right? The expectation is to then create more Israeli soldiers. Okay, you're now messed up, make new babies. Meital Yaniv in their work brilliantly writes about how Israelis are assigned soldiers at birth. I grew up in Palestine as a young person before I moved to Turtle Island and experienced this militarization, and luckily left before being conscripted. But this feeling, this expectation is something that Jewish diaspora may not understand about what it means to be Jewish in the state of Israel. And again, this is not something that can be compared to any form of trauma or violence that Palestinians experience. But in Jewish communities, there is something really important here about how Jews are able to understand the traumatized violence of the body that people who are raised as soldiers experience. In Israel, when people come back, they have these things called kvarizun villages that are healing villages, that when people who are totally messed up from both serving and the oppression that they just pursued against Palestinians and then doing incredible amounts of drugs, they're just placed in those villages to heal. And people just say, like, that's normal. That's a normal part of society, and that's what's expected. And I think that Israel really strategically covers this up because they know how it would be weaponized, right? It's very easy to kind of to slice up that claim and say, this is not actually building Jewish life, right? This is part of a larger imperial outpost of the United States in Southwest and North Africa. So one of the things I'm really interested to think about in my work going forward, both with Jewish anti-Zionist diasporists and with liberal Israelis, is to think about what Emmanuel Levinas calls the face of the other. And in his work, Totality and Infinity, he's really trying to unravel what it will take to feel an ethical desire and relation to someone who is completely different and who you disagree with and who you might see as an enemy. And his argument is that this can't happen without the face-to-face interaction where you see the vulnerability of someone's face. In the, Israeli experience, they're not seeing Palestinians. Palestinians are quarantined for a reason, right? There is no solidarity that can be built apart from very, very few leftists who have remained that Hila talked about because of this lack of seeing the face. And so in Butler's work, they talk about why it's so important to for Israelis and Jews to see the face of the Palestinian other. But I think that we've seen over the course of the last several years that this ethical demand doesn't work, right? We have, in a lot of Jewish movements, we have relied on kind of Holocaustal imagery and reminding of never again is now, and that we, reminding of how we experience this as Jews, and so we would never want someone else to experience this, to evoke an empathy from Israelis to not do this anymore, and it doesn't work because it is too far gone as an imperial state, right? So my intervention with Butler is to say that we actually are wondering, would Israelis be willing to engage in questions of Jewish identity if the focus were not on the Palestinian other, but rather on the diasporic Jewish other who represents a non-militarized path towards Jewish futurity? And with the kind of ingrained Israeli rejection of diasporic Jews, it will be incumbent upon those diasporic Jews to offer support in paths towards emigration, if it is so desired. a prior Levinasian confrontation between diasporic Jews and Israelis is needed before meeting the insurmountable demand of an Israeli seeing the intimate face of a Palestinian. I wonder in my work, what would it look like for the anti-Zionist diasporic Jew to see the face of the Israeli before he takes his life? And how might this authentic reflection re-engage the ethical Israeli? Again, according to Butler, quote, in suicide, the insupportable logic of usurpation is reversed. One does not live at the expense of the other, but one gives one's life so that the other may live, end quote. So for the Israeli soldier who has met the ethical limit of Palestinian oppression, but still serves as a pawn for the IOF, the only absolution is to symbolically trade their own life for that of a Palestinian's. I think that this work is difficult, but we have the tools, right? Diasporic responsibility is going to emerge here in taking care of our own, which is the hard work of any anti-racist, anti-imperial project. But we have the tools from so many years of abolitionist organizing to really move towards an expansive decolonial future that allows Israelis to engage through speculative fiction, art, etc., to undo this militarization and engage with the Jewish diasporic other and see how could I actually see myself in that future. And I really think that in this work, I'm concerned with the need for Israelis and diasporic Jews to examine the internal Jewish other as a precondition of Jewish work in Palestine liberation movements. And this doesn't mean we still don't show up with our Palestinian comrades and do the work with them, but internally, this is what our work needs to look like. So as I begin to conceptualize the liberatory potentials of Yerida, right, the leaving of the State of Israel, we need to think about the difficulty of multiple movement, right? And what that will do to people and what that has done to people, especially Mizrahim and Sephardim who have been forced to move multiple times, and what that would do and who has access to multiple citizenship. What is our responsibility? But ultimately, any face-to-face examination of Israeli immigration in relation to Jewish diasporic hope must consider the painful realities of displacement and root itself in both the sacrifices of a militarized society and the spiritual appeal of a diasporic Torah. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here and for being here. I want to invite us to take a shared breath. I'm going to put my hand on my heart. You do what feels best in your body. And I'm going to breathe from my nose and exhale from my mouth. I invite you to do the same. Inhale. And let it go out the mouth. My name is meital yaniv. My first name means dew water, like the morning dew. And my last name means will bear fruit. And those meaning-making are happening in Hebrew, which is my mother tongue. I was born and raised as a Zionist occupier on the land of Palestine. I come from Sephardic Jewish lineage from Salonika in Greece, Ashkenazi Jewish lineage from Poland, and Arab Jewish lineage from Palestine. My Arab Jewish grandfather and Sephardic grandmother met because they were both recruiters for the Lehi. For those who don't know, Lehi is one of many terrorist organizations that were conspiring on the land before the State of Israel was established, and then they all became what we know of today as the IOF. The Lehi is special as it is known still by the Jews as a terrorist organization. So it was one of the most extreme one, if anyone knows about the Deir Yassin massacre that was there doing, among many other massacres. My Ashkenazi lineage survived the Holocaust and arrived to the newly established State of Israel, where my father became an Air Force commander, his brother died as a soldier in the Yom Kippur War, and their uncle, my great uncle, is a Mossad agent. I've been tending to a prayer to bring the Israeli identity and state to a loving and caring death. It's a living prayer, and what I'm about to offer is one of the ways I back it up. I want to begin by saying that there is nothing I can share here today that your body doesn't already know. And I am going to be invoking on your body, so please remember that. My hope is that you live here today with questions rather than answers, and that you carry and water those questions as seeds. And I want to also acknowledge that the language that I'm using has already failed. I believe that sometimes we need to jump over and ahead of the practical how-tos to be able to truly feel how a change will feel in our bodies. At time traveling to catch the feeling and then walk backwards to find the steps that maintain that feeling that we found. This is also called a dream. This is also called an embodied dream. I am about to paint 3 different frames for you. And the possible immediate reaction of your mind to those frames will most likely be in the realm of these words: impossible, childish, immature, unlogical, extreme, stupid, has no long view, unpracticed, unpractical, inexperienced, privilege, and absolute failure. I invite us to trust that failure, and when those type of words arise within you, acknowledge them, maybe even find the space they are connected to within yourself and stay in that discomfort with me. The only true possibility exists past that step. Frame number 1. Palestine is free. Right of return is happening fully. And Israelis are experiencing forced migration, even if it is by choice. Every single Israeli on the land of Palestine is complicit in occupation, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, slaughter, and genocide of Palestinians. And they've been complicit in this for the past 8 decades. Every single Israeli is missing pieces of their soul because of that complicity. It is a people that by design are not in touch with their nervous system and senses, and their hearts have been hijacked. These are the people who will be forced to migrate. Where does the violence go when victimhood and self-preservation is all a people know? What do we need to do right now to prepare for their arrival? How do we disarm a body that is a killer from birth? A people that cannot separate Judaism from Zionism or anti-Zionism from anti-Semitism. The word, image, and idea of a Jew, specifically a diasporic Jew, is the untouchable Jew every Israeli has been trained to look down upon. We criticize American Jews for looking at Israelis as their foot soldiers. We also need to criticize Israeli for seeing American Jews through an anti-Semitic lens. All that is left of their Jewishness is Zionist militarization, that is their God, prayer, and song. They hate like they were hated. Let me say this again. They hate like they were hated. And every attempt to show them their own anti-Semitic tendency is heard through the bells of victimization, which produce a larger weaponizing response. A quick story to explain a little bit more what I mean. When I moved here, one of the things that I started doing to undo the Zionism within is to return to Jewish practices and return to Jewish spirituality through my lineages. And I wanted to start lighting Shabbat candles, which is something that I've never done. It's very common for Israelis to grow up extremely secular. And I asked an Ashkenazi, Sephardic, and Arab Jewish friends what they say, and I ended up making my own prayer and connecting it to the liberation of Palestine. And years later, when I came back to the land to visit my family, after not being there for a while, we met for Shabbat dinner, for Friday dinner. And I said that I'm going to light Shabbat candles, and my families decided to stay in the other room. It was unheard of for them that their child is going to do something like that. What we're seeing inside Israel right now, the complete fight between secular Jews and Orthodox Jews has everything to do with this kind of anti-Semitic tendencies that we were raised in. My family, and it's not a unique experience, hate Orthodox Jews the same way that they hate Palestinians. So I ask again, within this frame, this first frame, what kind of preparation and permission needs to happen right here on Turtle Island for the arrival of such violence? What kind of preparation and permission needs to happen within our own bodies to become life rafts of a different arrival? Frame number 2. Palestine is still unfree, but Israelis within and without are choosing to denounce and give up their citizenship and become refugees. They choose exile collectively, which means the government falls and the state of Israel stops to exist. The majority of former Israelis leave the land. Some are asked to stay by Palestinians. The ones that are leaving are supported by the entire Jewish diaspora all over the world. And I ask again, what kind of preparation and permission needs to happen right now for that type of arrival? Maybe Palestinians who are returning from their exile and diaspora back to the land exchange their homes with the Israelis who are leaving. Land does not belong to people, but people belong to land, and the wisdom and knowledge the original caretakers and stewards of the land have cannot be measured, bought, buried, or erased. Imperial and colonial forces have desperately wanted to dismember those connections through the burning and impounding of bodies, languages, water, death and birth practices, families, land, stories, medicines, recipes, grief. What has been buried can surface, what has been ash can rise, what has been taken can be freed. I've had the opportunity in recent years to teach in prisons here in California, and something very profound that I've learned from my students is the term, I have a body. So people who have killed say that they have a body. And what I learned from that embodiment is, yes, I have a body, but I'm also carrying the weight of the body that I took. And I want us to remember that every person in Israel has a body. Every person who lives in Israel is complicit in the killing of generations of Palestinians, whether they are a soldier or not. But they are also living in bodies that from birth were taught how to completely dissociate from the body. So they are not aware of their full weight. So when we're talking about even this kind of arrival, we still need to ask ourselves, how can we support them to find their true weight? Because when that true weight is known to a body, the state of Israel will not be needed anymore. Frame number 3. Jews in the United States are offering back their homes for the vision of land back on Turtle Island, and Jews in the United States are giving up their citizenship, choosing a refugee status on Turtle Island. What will it take for you to offer your home for the vision of a free Turtle Island? What will it take for you to pack your belongings, clean the floors over and over again, paint the walls, leave food in the fridge? Can you begin the process of finding the hands the land need for its own healing? And may the land healing be our healing as we let go of ownership and return to true belonging, which has always only ever been with the earth. Empire will collapse without our holding. Empire is because we are, and one of the feeding tubes that can be cut is citizenship. A Judaism outside of citizenship on Turtle Island for the ones that will argue with me right now that we must hold to this citizenship, whether here or in Israel, because that is how we organize and that is how we move and that is how we use our privilege for the one we are fighting for. If you have that alarm bell going off right now really strongly, that we gotta keep on to that citizenship because that's the only way we get to do this, get to do what we are meant to do. Let's take a breath and say, yes, that is also true. And maybe, just maybe, that is also how we are kept in the cage of our comfort and complicity. If we give up our citizenship, we can truly unsettle the entirety of the Jewish lineage. So this was my 3 frames offered to your body. And I will end by offering a few ways to start practicing in the through lines that connect all 3. Point all your fingers inward. We are all complicit in every single structure we are trying to topple and undo, and we must find the feeding tube and slice them one by one within our own flesh. Tend to the buried and stolen grief. Remember that the ones that survived the Holocaust, the Jewish Holocaust, are also the ones that participated in the Jewish Holocaust. If you left the train, if you survived the train ride, and you were not immediately sent to the gas chamber, you were sent to work. If you were sent to work, you waited in the end of the gas chamber and took the bodies. You cut the wood for the oven, you placed the bodies in the oven, you worked and made the death camps work under a boot of Nazi unbelievable dehumanization. That is how you survive a Holocaust, by working the Holocaust. These are the people that survived it and came to a state in which the citizens of that state called them soaps, sabonim, and called them sheep. Their stories, their grief, was never made room for. So it is within our responsibility, within our lineages, to create that space for them, even if they are not here anymore. And to start working with our unwell ancestors and make these bodies become a vessel, become a backspace that can hold the grief in our own body right now for all of them. Not finding comfort or rest in an anti-Zionist shape, especially not in the US. We are living in the belly of empire. It is a beautiful thing that we must continue to do, to imagine new ways of creating Jewishness within anti-Zionist imagining, but you must also leave the door open, because the soldier in Gaza is Jewish, and the settler in the West Bank is Jewish, and the Israeli government is Jewish. And you don't get to be here as Jews, imagining a new kind of Jewishness without opening the door and making a path for them. This is one lineage. Know, like truly know that nothing true is instant or immediate, that right of return and land back are already happening in our consciousness and in the beginning threads of material ways. The land bodies are already preparing for their return. The land bodies. This conscious step of embodying the frequency of return must happen fully, as it is a process. The material world manifestation of transfer of keys is the last step. But in order to get to that step, we must support the preparation of the land and ourselves in this very now. Return has many known and unknown, seen and unseen steps, invocations, prayers, rememberings, and actions. This is a call to put them all in motion right now. Right of return will never be complete without land back. May we all offer our homes. May we become shelter. I leave you with this question. What is the prayer for a land that is currently in the process of being returned? May we utter those words. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just inviting another breath. We learned a lot of ways to breathe. Let's keep doing it. As meital reminded us, there's nothing that anyone said that our bodies don't already know. Inviting questions here. As of yet, the questions haven't arrived in my lap. And the questions via Zoom haven't come yet, but just encouraging folks who are tuning in via Zoom to send your questions in via chat so we can see them and receive them. And I'll do my best to weave them together, and if your question doesn't get answered in the way that you were hoping, they're open to receiving questions after for folks in the chat and also in person here, and just continuing that practice of leaving with questions, living with questions, breathing with questions, collapsing with questions, dying with questions.
You won't be allowing any speaking, just questions from the crowd, correct?
Yeah. Welcoming opportunities for conversation after. Okay. All right. Collapse, failure. It's all here. Okay. Great. I'm just receiving these. Maybe I'll just ask one question from my heart, and then I'll do my best as they're answering to kind of articulate these questions. Yeah, I'm just really feeling the ways that y'all are talking about language as failure, appreciating that call of Hebrew as failure, as someone who shared Hebrew right before you said that, and just appreciating that invitation to be with the failures. And I'm curious, I think about prostration, which is one of the original forms of prayer, burying ourselves in the dirt, as a form of failure, as a choreography of we don't have the words. We already don't have the words. The words have already failed. And I'm curious how you all relate to embodiment and choreographies of dissent, choreographies of failure, and what our bodies and what the land and what the water knows in terms of movement, dance, prayer that can't happen with these words, and welcoming answers that are nonverbal too.
I love this question. This is what we'll be doing this afternoon, and
Great.
It has to be somatic. The first step is even trying to get people willing to engage in the somatics, particularly when all this trauma is in the body. I'm a dancer, so this is the way that I have moved in and out of kind of a militarized experience of self. And a performance piece that I do with my Palestinian colleague very much relies on those exact things. Thinking about both the Jewish and Muslim traditions and many religious traditions of submerging in water and cleansing. So we use mikvah and wudu to not have a kind of coexistence relationship as a Jew and a Palestinian, but rather to honor the martyrs in Gaza and think about what is it going to take to do that diasporic exchange as the two of us are a Jew and a Palestinian diaspora, and what that will mean to engage refugees on the land, right? Which is this bizarre situation that Palestinians are named as refugees on their own land. So I think that the somatics for me are that I'm still doing it, that I still get angry, that I still get tense doing this work and not knowing if I'm right. And I think that the failure is an important part of that, because disability studies shows us that like bodies fail all the time, and that is a way that we learn each other and learn how to be in relation to each other. So when I'm specifically trying to think about this relationship between diasporic Jews and Israelis, you know, I'm going to engage more of Daniel Boyarin's work around like what is strong, what is manly, what is masculinity, with this Israeli like chauvinism around not wanting to be this pathetic, weakened Jew after the Holocaust, and that is how Israelis see diasporic Jews. So I think that this gift from Hila about like how to engage weakness from the Israeli perspective in doing anti-Zionist work is crucial.
Can I add something?
Yeah, please.
I want to say two things. One is when I say failure of the language, first of all, yes, it's a colonial language, but beyond that, the words of the English language have been commodified and marketed to a lack of meaning. Not to mention that words like freedom, solidarity, liberation are spoken by everyone you agree with and everyone you do not agree with. Everyone's fighting for liberation, it's just not the same vision. So what does liberation mean at that moment? And I think there's a way in which we are so attuned to thinking something through, thinking a solution through, that we forgot the language of our body. And if we don't return to the language of the body, we will keep thinking something through, which we've been doing. And we're like, this is not the kind of failure that I'm saying trust. This is the kind of failure that I'm saying, let's leave it. Let's find a different way. Let's return to a non-verbal place. Let's return to a place, to a language that none of us know yet. Let's invent one. Let's just make sounds. You know, someone told us that we have 6 senses, and we were like, okay, cool. Maybe you have 12. Same with language. I work as an energy worker, as a death worker, and what I love about that work is that language, this kind of language, is not needed. Write the top part again so I can hear it and understand. And we all speak, that's the mother tongue of all of us. Yep. So it's just trusting that more and more.
Anything like that? Cool. So just want to, like, we're in the same room as someone who just asked a moment ago, will there be an opportunity for me to like talk? Like that person who just was here. I want to like be like, oh, that just happened. And we said, no, this is the opportunity for questions. They left. I think this is their question. So I just want to like, what if we engage that? The end of it is, why are we obsessed by Jews in Israel? And so I just like get that question a lot from my grandfather. I get that a lot from people who are like, why are we just can't stop thinking about that? And I'm wondering if y'all can engage with that from this practice of dissent and failure. Like, why is this here? Why is it like this? And if there's any like responses or non-responses you want to offer to this like kind of stuck line of fear.
I'll jump in quickly. When I hear we here, then we are in the United States of America, right? This is this current we. Israel is the largest U.S. military base in the world. The entirety of Israel is the largest U.S. military base in the world. There is no separation between the forces, whether it's ICE, police, U.S. Army. There's no separation. They all train with Israel. Israelis are training them here. They're training there. Yeah. Cap City is mini Gaza. Mini Gaza is where they train the people that the police from the U.S. that goes trains in mini Gaza. When the Israeli police comes here, they train in Cap City. Weapons, all of those things. It's one army. It's one force. So we are not obsessed, I would say, with Jews in Israel. I think our obsession, which is not an obsession, I would say our prayer is to bring liberation and freedom to Palestine and Palestinian people. And it's not something that we will bring. That was not the That's a failure of words.
Yeah.
But that the prayer is to support in every way possible, to offer our lives for the right of return of Palestinians to their land. And in order to do that, Jews need to come to terms with what happened in the lineage. And how can Israel, I would say, stop exist for that vision of return. So the obsession is within the United States, because it's United States doing problem and everything else. The genocide of Gaza happened in collaboration. Yeah. And 8 decades of ethnic cleansing, occupation, and apartheid on the land is happening because the US backs it up diplomatically, financially, in the UN, and otherwise. So if we want to stop this, we stop it here. This is where the mothership is.
To me, yeah, thank you. To me, it feels very familiar. Thich Nhat Hanh was a reference multiple times. Anti-war Buddhist monk practitioner was yelled at during a talk, maybe similar to this, during the Vietnam War by someone who's from Vietnam and yelling at Thich Nhat Hanh, "Why aren't you in Israel? Or why aren't you in Vietnam? Why aren't you in whatever nation state? Why are you here?" And he said, to water a tree, you don't water the leaves, you water the roots. So I'm just feeling that answer here and feeling that person as an instigator of that root watering. So thank you, whoever you are and wherever you went. Thank you. Just want to bring a moment to the young people. Just feeling like you're bringing in yourself, Hila, as a young person, and that refusal, that dissent. And someone was wondering a little bit more about the anti-draft movement and the reality of the mandatory draft for young people, and curious if you'd be open to sharing more about that and how that impacts people's wellness, how that impacts people's possibility of hope, and anything you're learning from young people, and how they shape how you're relating to what could be.
So first I'll say there's one organization in Israel that is called Profil 21, Profile 21, and that's the organization that helped me when I was 18. 21 Profile 21, and that's the number you get from the army if you get released based on mental health. So this is the title. So the organization is called in the name of this category that you are seeking to get from the army. I think the most devastating thing for me is that this organization is not known enough. Obviously, it's not funded by any entity that is big enough to have enough money. And so for young teenagers in Israel to find even the option to hear that this, you need to be so lucky to have the access for that. And I think this is what's so, I think this is what saddens me, because to be a conscious objector, you need to come from a lineage of a family that, or friends or society, a community that, that is out in the open, right? That's something that people know, people hear about it, but it also requires exactly this thing, this heroic resistance, that not every 17-year-old boy or girl can have access to physically in their body, right? And even what I did requires some kind of it is an action still, right? It's not completely passive, but so my story is that I did this, and my mom actually, it was so important for my mom that her children will go to the army, so she said she will call the army and tell them that I'm lying, that I'm actually not depressed, right? So there was this this is the level of resistance within Israeli Jews of what it means not to go to the army, and it's just so sad that a mother would do something like this to their child, right? Instead of thinking, I want to support her, or I want to save her from this mechanism. So for young people who, and again, this is very much an Ashkenazi, Arab, Jewish, Mizrahi thing, which is very sad. Tel Aviv, in very Ashkenazi upper-class schools, you'll have more access to this information, to the idea that this exists, that you can do conscious objection or just not go. There are other ways of not going to the army that is not refusal. For example, women who get married can receive an exception. And while this is a very patriarchal idea and notion, as an option, I would still say go take that option, right? Another option is to say you're very religious, right? So there's young teenagers who are learning prayers and learning the Torah and performing Jewishness in an Orthodox way to get this exception. There's all these ways, but these ways are not familiar to people in Beersheba, in Dimona, in Yerucham, in all these towns. I'm not even talking about the towns where Mizrahis were, like where my mom was shipped from Iran to the middle of nowhere in the desert and lived in a refugee camp for 7 years of her life. So like there's people who are not even have the access to get to this, and this is what saddens me, and this would be, and this is why I think we should act in both ways. We should support conscious objectors. I'm not saying not at all, but we should also raise the voice about the other options of getting out and what does it mean to just not do it, right? What are the options that would open up?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Blessing the unwell youth who are still doing what they can to be seen and reveal the wounds of empire. Yeah, we have some really good questions here, and I want to add this in. Someone was saying that they heard the notion of a Jewish diaspora questioned because it reinforces the idea of a Jewish homeland. It can be pointed out that most or many Jews cannot trace their ancestry back to anyone who actually lived in what is now Eretz Israel. What do you think of this line of thinking? Does anyone have any thoughts? It feels similar to the inner-outer that you were talking about, Asher. You want to add more?
Sure, yeah. So there's a lot more of this paper that I didn't read that really gets at that question and looks at all of these kind of like histories and scholarship. And they're really talking about how after the fall of the Second Temple, thousands of years ago, Judaism changed from being like not even a religion, like I can't put it in the same words that we understand today, right? Because Judaism was both a law of the land and a religion, one in the same way, but not in the way we understand it as nation state of Israel, right? In a very different way. So when the Second Temple fell, Judaism changed, like biblical law changed to be able to encompass all of the traditions that were specifically needed for a grounded temple where they were making sacrifices, etc., to then be able to practice it wherever they were, right? And this is thousands of years ago. So Judaism developed into a diasporic religion, as we would call it today. And so it is a rich, rich history that was then picked up again, let's say in the 19th century when socialist Bundists, and other kind of religious anti-Zionists started to conceptualize a more concrete idea of diasporic Judaism because of the, initial rising of Zionism. And so I think it's important that then when we think about that today, that we think about that as the tradition, right? And this is all from a very Ashkenazi, Eastern European perspective. So all of the other work that has been done by incredible scholars and thinkers in Southwest and North Africa who are Jewish and who may not be able to return to those particular lands because of what Zionism has created, there are a lot of other opportunities with these offerings that meital had us thinking about that people might be able to engage if they were actually not just thinking in the binaries of nation state. And Daniel Boyan writes about this, that Judaism as diasporic and having a diasporic Torah is a unique part of Judaism and also is something that allows us to flourish, right, wherever we are. And when we start to think about nation means something very different in the Jewish context. Israel means God wrestlers, right? It doesn't mean nation state. It doesn't mean land. It means the essence of Jewish people together practicing Torah, perhaps speaking biblical Hebrew and Yiddish, having shared culture around the Jewish holiday calendar that allows us to have this touch with the divine, right? And there's a lot of different kind of thinkers who think about that. So people have become really, really, and it's so beautiful to get to say this in a church because it's, I can feel the spirit and I know that you all understand what I'm saying. And not all Jews in the States understand what I'm saying because they have become so untethered from that understanding of Judaism.
Yeah. Thank you. So we have about 10 minutes left for questions. And if your question doesn't get answered, again, they're open to receiving commentary after and connecting.
You can send us emails.
Yeah, emails exist imperfectly. So there's a really powerful question about militarism and how folks in Los Angeles can resist a genocide that's profitable amidst capitalist West. And I want to weave in a theme of hospitality that I've been thinking about a lot to this question is how do we support systems to die well, as you shared about the Israeli identity, through the practice of hospitality, through this open door, radical hospitality. And within Jewish tradition, and so many traditions, they talk about, Rabbi Lynn Gottlieb, anti-Zionist rabbi for over 50 plus years, has shared that radical hospitality within Judaism is not just opening your door and waiting for someone to come and give them a seat at the table and give them food, but we go out into the streets. We look for the people who need what they need, and we give it to them. And so I'm curious if y'all could sort of wrestle Israel with these themes of death work for systems through hospitality, and any ways you all can imagine people here in the belly of the beast who are so close to these roots of these trees of empire can do individually, interpersonally to resist militarism, to resist empires together.
We can give up our citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
I won't leave us here, though. I think for me, I'll go back to the prayer that I've been tending to, which is the prayer to bring the Israeli identity and state to a loving and caring death. It's in my book, Bloodlines. It's over there if you want to look at it later. And I've been moving with this book in Turtle Island for the past few years. And whenever I read the death prayer in the end, I kind of look at the audience and be like, are you getting this? Yes, this is about the Israeli identity and state because this is mine to bring to its death. But are you getting this? Do you know what's yours? Are you bringing it to its death?
Yeah.
We are all feeding empire. It is because we are, especially here.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that this notion of, yes, hospitality to each other. Yes, when you cut a feeding tube, may your friend be there to tend to that wound with you. Mm-hmm. Yes, go outside and find who needs the support, but what are you doing in your own body to release yourself from those systems? Not to mention that I think specifically in my experience here in Turtle Island, it's so easy, especially in the last 3 years, to see how the entities that we are fighting against play out in our most intimate relationships. And this transference happened because we are a part of it. And instead of identifying how we are a part of it, we go out and we cut through and we're gonna end this. We're gonna fight this. But we're forgetting the step of how am I feeding this? And then I play it out with my best friend and then we're canceling each other out. But it's the need to play it out is an actual trauma response in our bodies. So I think there's not enough questioning of what are we complicit in. There's a lot of outrage. We're a little bit addicted to the outrage. There's a lot of like, this is wrong. We got to fight against it, but it's wrong because the system is holding it and that system is being fed by you. Even though you go to the protest. I am writing books about liberation with machines that are killing people in the Congo. And I'm writing about liberation. And with each type of my keyboard, someone in the Congo is dying for me to write this. We are all complicit. Yeah. And I think instead of the deep outrage and outpour outward, especially within circles that agree on so many things with each other, it's really time to like put mirrors in front of ourselves. And what are we actually willing to give up? It's very easy to say everything, right? Like, what would you give up for the fire of collective liberation? Everyone here is going to scream everything. What is that everything? Let's get very specific. Let's give up something today.
Yeah.
I want to support everything you said, but I also think that there's people who can't give up everything, who are afraid to give up everything, or afraid to go out to the street, to demonstrations, or afraid to be tear gassed, pepper sprayed. And for these people, I would offer to connect with people. So kind of like what you said, Ian, like of the going out, and I think there's ways to connect with people in Gaza, to connect with people in Iran, to connect with people in south of Lebanon. I'm a part of a community of women that 45 women that each of us connected with one family in Gaza and have been supporting this one family for 7 months now. Not just financially, but also communicating, sending pictures, sharing our lives together. And while I cannot do much more than that, I feel like that is already everything, right? Like the fact that we have connection with people and we show to people that we are there, we are listening, we're supporting, we can give as much money as we can, but we are also giving something that is other than that. So for those who are afraid or unable to engage or unable to give money, connection doesn't cost money.
Yeah. Thank you both. Thank you so much. We're nearing our close here for this part of our day together. There's going to be a transition to the rest of the gathering here at the church, and then there'll be a workshop after for folks who are staying. There's some food that's being set up. I want to just give a moment to presence Harriet Tubman and the practice of prophetic presencing. Like I heard you do that a moment ago. Palestine is free. Harriet Tubman would share that she is free. We are free. There was a question about legacy of contempt, how language can perpetuate a legacy of contempt. And instead of adopting the language of the oppressor, what it could look like to renew an essence and power of language to inform the present situation. And in this potentially final, for now, moment, I'm wondering if each of y'all would be up for just sharing some spontaneous prophetic prayer, like what is happening already, what has been happening already, together, collectively, to close this moment.
I'll try to name a few that have been. It's a good question because, right, for me, it's the nightmares of everything that go wrong. That's what haunts me. Yeah. But doing this work, being guided by so many abolitionists and decolonial healers is what reminds me to try to have that prayer for hope. Hebrew in my body as welcoming and safe. Hebrew as my birth language that I reclaim. and that I speak with all these people that I've met in the land of Palestine who have now joined me in Denver, Colorado, speaking in Hebrew, tending to gardens, doing the body work, moving. I'm thinking of the future of Jews who love lighting candles, who say the prayers, and who are not afraid of speaking to God, and Jews who build the muscles to receive Israelis with all of their anger and racism and destruction, and that my Palestinian comrades will live on the land, and that they will perhaps be friends with Jews there too, on their own terms. Perhaps I'll visit Palestine, and we will be there as guests. And that here, we will actually be able to know that we're not just living on other people's land, but that like land back movements become revolutionary around the globe. They pop up everywhere. And it's because people were more interested in the people in front of them than AI and technology that surveils them. And that they deeply want to connect with the people that they don't understand. And that there will be babies.
Yeah.
There will be so many babies
Yeah.
who are not used as human shields by Israelis to limit the aid of humanitarian food to Palestinians in Gaza, and not babies who are raised to be soldiers, but babies who learn about Judaism and get to choose what kind of Judaism they want to practice. Or they say, no, Dad, I don't want to be Jewish. I'm going to be something else. Fine, but let them choose to dissent from religiosity, or let them choose to accept God, rather than not even be given the choice to become a murderer.
Can you hear that? Okay, friends. Just want to offer some gratitude. If folks have a way of doing that feels good for you, with your hands, with your heart, some way to offer gratitude to our dissenters, please. Could be noise. Thank you all so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah. We all, just as Janet comes up, I'm envisioning each of you, all of us, whoever is here, prostrating on the graves, prostrating in our tradition, in so many traditions there were and are the mekonenot, the grievers, the wailers, paid to wail, invite the tears to bring a world that could be, and just wanting my hand at your back, your hand at my back, and we don't know whose hands are at our backs, together, dreaming into the world that could be. So thank you all so much. Thanks for this to be a space too. Yeah.
So,
It's wonderful to have such amazing guest speakers, and to continue this throughout this year, our offering baskets need to be filled so we can continue the work and continue having amazing guest speakers.
Can I say one thing really quick about that? This is such an amazing. Okay, that's enough.
Well, we do break bread here together because we do have bodies, and we need that sustenance, and we need that communion. And I want to, and the person who brings bread is allowed to speak for no more than 5 minutes. from their heart. And I have a lot in my heart. And I was thinking, a number of things occurred to me about when you said about freedom and what that means. And I was saying, I'm wearing this shirt with a quote that Fannie Lou Hamer said better, that ain't none of us free until all of us are free.
Yeah.
And that's 100% true. And like Roque Dalton said, that my veins don't end in me, but in the unanimous blood of all of those who fight for love and life and little things and landscapes and bread and poetry for everybody. But I think in another sense, I think we are free. At least we are definitely spiritually free to choose our own destiny. I mean, I remember when, beginning of sort of second wave feminism, we talked about anatomy is not destiny. I don't think our DNA is our destiny either. I don't think our legacy is our destiny. I think we can, in fact, choose our ancestors as well as our future. I know who my biological ancestors are. James Bryce Bawn was a Methodist circuit preacher in Kansas 100 years ago. Sarah Bawn listed an enslaved woman as part of her will. I know I know what's in my DNA. But I also know that I am free to affirm and reject those aspects of my legacy and to rewrite my story. And I invite everyone here to rewrite their story, to choose their ancestors. So I'm going to say who I was with. I was with Spartacus. I was with Gerard Wynne Stanley. I was with John Wesley. I was with Toy Purina. I washed the bodies of my comrades Crispus Attucks and Patrice Lumumba and my comrade Hamza in Canunas. I was with Abby Kelly Foster and with Harriet Tubman. I was at Harper's Ferry. I was in jail with Kate Richards O'Hare. I was in Warsaw. I was in Sobibor. I was in Stalingrad. I was at Stonewall. In this body, I was in Oxnard in 1979, where we ran the Ku Klux Klan out of town. And on Friday, and I forgot my prop here, on Friday, I was in Chennai and New Delhi and San Salvador and Queberha in the Eastern Cape. I was in Seattle. I was in Zaragoza. I was in Mexico City. I was in MacArthur Park in this body. And I was in Tel Aviv with my comrades fighting for a communist world. Thank you.
Amen.
I love that woman so so much. I really, really do. Okay, let's get in a circle. We can do it in and out. I mean, we'll be in this. They'll be okay, yeah. Let's make a circle. Make a circle. In 5, 4, 3, 2. Everybody in the back can come in if they want. Everybody come on in. Come on in from the back. All these people have been doing things. Wonderful. Come on in, everybody, Marty. Fred. Here he is here. But we couldn't have asked for a better person than Larry Dilge. Oh my God.
I am Louise's foot.
Yeah, you're.
If not now, tell me when. If not now, tell me when. We may never see this moment or place in time again. If not now, tell me when. I see sorrow, trouble in this land. I see sorrow and trouble in this land. Although there will be struggle, we'll make the change we can. If not now, tell me when. Stop bombing children in Palestine. Stop bombing hospitals in Lebanon. We must stop supplying weapons that are used for genocide. If not now, tell me when. We'll work it till it's done. Every daughter, every son, every soul that ever longed for something better, something brighter. It will take a change of heart for us to mend. It will take a change of heart for this to mend. But miracles can happen every shining now and then. If not now, tell me when. If not now, tell me when. If not now, tell me when. We may never see this moment or place in time again. If not now, tell me when.
Okay. And together, one of the things that we do before we leave is we recognize that one of the things we're going to do during the week is carry on. So we can lift our hands together, and we're going to say carry on at the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Carry on! All right, enjoy your lunch, everyone.